courtesan session for the trial of Coyote versus Acme. I had to start out that way, but because, well, that's the kind of movie that we're gonna get. It's been a while since we got a Looney Tunes movie. Oh wait, scratch that. We had last year's The Day the Earth Blew Up. And, well, let's say that the movie of today had some story behind it, in which it was completed a few years ago, but apparently the Warner Brothers CEO didn't have so much faith on it, and Warner Brothers was doing all that hubbaloo with maintaining money, merging with all these proper technological properties like Times Warner, and now it's having kind of like this is shiso with Paramount. There's also the fact that they wanted to make some tax write-offs, and well, most of their stuff got either canceled or shelved. One of the most infamous ones is, of course, Batgirl. Even though that one, I just hope that it stays on the shelf. Mostly because I don't have faith. I don't have any more faith with the DC property, and now, and also, I think it also made some cancellation of some shows that it at least has some cult following. I'm looking at Final Space, of course. Thankfully, thankfully managed to find a way to finish the story. But one of the biggest victims of that catastrophe is none other than the movie of today, Coyote versus Acme, in which, to be fair, I was also kind of a little bit skeptical on how the product was gonna be, mostly because since they did say that it was gonna be one of those live action and cartoon hybrids. That gets me a little bit worried in the sense that over the last couple of years, when they tried that, they always failed miserably. Three that come into my mind was, for example, Space Jam: New Legacy, which was awful. Tom and Jerry the movie, that movie, which I hated it, and of course the Chip and Dale Rescue Ranger movie, which I hated it too. All these three movies are awful. I did make kind of like my stance of why a lot of these things doesn't work, and why I hate them. But the biggest thing that I always kind of criticize is that I never like kind of like the fact that when they make all these kind of movies, they always kind of they level the humans, the live action humans, to try to act like cartoons, just because they want to be in the same level of cartoons. But unfortunately, as much as they try, it can't be done. No matter how much they try, it can't be done because, well, cartoons has kind of like a more, let's say, an aura that makes them do a lot of things that are larger than life, have more emotion, and they can get away with a lot of things. But when you kind of do live action, and especially when I even criticize when movies in which they make them, act like cartoon characters, instead of being funny, it feels more embarrassing and cringy. I never honestly, I never liked those. Of course, that we had kind of like a few exceptions. The mother of all those movies is, of course, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And I'm not gonna lie that I do have kind of like a very soft spot, maybe a little bit of a nostalgic soft spot for the first Space Jam, and also the Looney Tunes Back in Action also can fall in that category. So, but this one is because they mostly kind of like respect some of the rules that humans should stay in the lane, and cartoons, they must do what they do best. They can break some of the rules, but they have to have kind of like a reason and a logic to it, or at least kind of like an explanation. Just like in the Space Jam movie, they do kind of like a vague explanation of when humans can basically break that rule. Maybe they kind of stay a little bit on their lane, considering how Michael Jordan was not exactly an actor on that movie. But the point is that Coyote versus Acme had that kind of like initial impression with me, although it really kind of sucked that it was shelved just because of the tax write-off. They didn't want it to deal with it, or probably Warner Brothers didn't have any faith on it. And the biggest thing that people really had this suspicious eye on it is that many actors who were involved into the movie, the animators, or even some of the test screenings that of the people who saw at the movie, at least in secret, they did claim that the movie was really good. They say that, man, you guys are missing out. So many of the animation fans got very curious, and in a way also outraged of the whole tax write-off. I'm pretty sure that even to this day, a lot of people are also a little bit upset about Batgirl, but that's them. I'm actually I was more worried about Coyote versus Acme. Although I did have one of those skepticism because one of the people who was involved into the movie is none other than John Cena. And let's face it, John Cena is not exactly an actor. He's a wrestler. Okay, what's the difference? But I still respect him, the guy. I don't dislike the guy, just in case. That is until this small company called Ketchup Entertainment. Apparently it kind of come out of nowhere, and last year it distributed this Looney Tunes movie. The later blew up, and it became one of my favorite movies of the year. I watched that movie kind of like twice, and man, that I give it enough praise. But so this company, because it wanted to keep up the legacy of the Looney Tunes, it decided to buy the Coyote vs. Acme movie out of the Warner Brothers hand, so they could get the chance to distribute it the way it needed to be, not on streaming, but on the big screen. Because let's face it, even though we're dealing with kind of like a very, very poor crisis on movie theater experiences, like for example ticket being expensive and all this stuff, still there's always the charm of watching things on the big screen where you can appreciate a lot of things. This is something that I learned from my animation school. Oh, and by the way, my animation school is gonna close, and it's gonna merge with the local college. So my salutes. But the thing is that they finally decided to distribute Coyote versus Acme, and once the date was set on that, I'm not gonna lie, I was really anticipating. It became one of my most anticipated movies of this year. Even more like other movies like Spider-Man or what was another movie that I was really anticipating? The Scary Movie. It was also one of those. So it was rainy. I had some sushi. And then went into the movie theater. And let me tell you guys that you just want to shake Warner Brothers, because you missed out. Because this movie was really good. I I'm even inclining to say that I love this movie. Just like the day the Earth blew up, this movie put the Looney Tunes into what they do best, in which is kind of like a lighthearted laugh, a plot that you don't necessarily have to take it too seriously because they don't care about continuities and all this stuff. They're just cartoons. They're just doing their job. They know about their immortality. They know what they are. But at the same time, the movie actually showcased a semblance of heart into it. It has some things that, let's say that you might probably say, why Warner Brothers didn't want to showcase this movie because the movie actually kind of criticizes itself in the sense of let's say that Warner Brothers being represented as the Acme Corporation, which is kind of like a running gag in over the years of the Looney Tunes, in which Acme is basically almost everywhere. It's kind of like the biggest conglomerate, pretty much like Disney. But this one kind of have this courtroom drama, which is actually kind of turned into an underdog movie, and you never expected that is an underdog movie, basically involving a coyote that over all these years he tries to catch a roadrunner and never does it, and never catch it. So I don't want to waste any more time, but and I will try to make this spoiler free, because this is a movie that I really urge you to watch it and give yourself a treat to do it, because there's some aspects that I will say that it's not exactly kind of like 100% perfect, but who is, and this one does the great enough job that it's very humbling to want to see it succeed, even if critically even if it doesn't make it successful economically. At least when you say critically acclaimed, is well done. Unlike movies that doesn't deserve to be critically acclaimed, I'm talking to you, He-Man. I'm sorry, I didn't like He-Man. Okay, but you might think that, well, this is the typical story of Coyote trying to get the Roadrunner, but that's pretty much what the movie is about. But then it takes an extra step, in which, after many years of the Coyote failing to catch the Roadrunner, especially because every time he gets the gadgets from the Acme Corporation, it always backfire on him. The products always malfunction, and he gets blown into bits and everything. It's saying he pretty much always have this failure, until he watched on TV an ad about this lawyer, a lawyer named Kevin Avery, played by Will Forte, who basically says that, okay, you cartoons have some problem with defective items, so we're gonna take your case. So then the Coyote gets the bright idea, but also the most daring idea, to sue the Acme Corporation. And that's kind of like the initial point of this wacky story. Yep. After many years, the Coyote finally gonna get the Acme Corporation to sue them for all the damage that they have done to him for their defective products. Little did they know that taking on this giant also involves conspiracies, assassination attempts, corruption, the cynicism of corporate, and also, like I said, an underdog story involving a small-time lawyer who, doesn't like to lose, and so he just takes some petty jobs and settle with for a couple of bucks. He doesn't want to go big and all this stuff. So yeah, that's basically kind of like this story into it, and as much. And I like that how the story progresses and things get even bigger and bigger with the conspiracy, and even though they make kind of like made up stories, like for example, oh, the Looney Tunes have this relation, this is why like Daffy Duck is loony and all these things. You might think, okay, that's not exactly a continuity, but think about it. They're making the Looney Tunes are basically kind of like actors. They just can do anything with a story and all this stuff. Almost like someone tests a star system in which they pick up the characters and they have different roles in different movies and all this stuff. But they keep being, their lovable self because of the typecast. So basically, if you know the Looney Tunes, how much you grew up all over these years, you already know the character. Most predominantly Wile Coyote, in which you know him. He doesn't talk. He's always determined to catch the Roadrunner, and he speaks on signs and all this stuff. But you know that he's really determined to get the Roadrunner. And the Roadrunner, just running around, just going meep and all this stuff. That's basically all you need to know about them. And I will say that one of the advantages of that is because I heard from many people that the Coyote and Roadrunner cartoons are probably some of the best of the classic Looney Tunes era, and it does. When you want to have kind of like a lighthearted laugh, it just fits. I love the chasing dynamic of these two a little bit more than I do with what was it with Tom and Jerry, which I despise, and also Itchy and Scratchy and Sylvester and Tweety. You probably know a pattern on that and why I don't like it compared to the Roadrunner and the Coyote. And yeah, it does. Even though I still like, the Bugs Bunny versus Daffy Duck cartoons, the Coyote and Roadrunner is still very fun to watch. For example, I did love the Super Nintendo game. That one is actually, I highly recommend you to play it if you have an emulator or something like that. Okay, I'm not trying to promote it, but where else were you gonna get it? Because it is a fun game, even though it can get a little hard, but it has that game also has an amazing running gag and great comedic visuals. That's pretty much the whole thing with it. So yeah, you don't need to know much about this. We only have kind of like the similar story of the Coyote suing the Acme Corporation. That kind of reminds me that is kind of funny that you might say, then why don't he get products from another brand? Well, he did once. There is this Cartoon Network commercial in which he gets the generic brand, and he finally catches the Roadrunner. So you're not gonna tell me that he didn't catch him. He never catches him, because he at least catch him once at least. But that's another story. But we should go along the way more with the human character. Like I said, the main protagonist on the human side is none other than Will Forte, and he does a nice job, I'll say. And his dynamic with the Coyote is pretty fun. I like that. Like I said, the human characters, they really stay underground. They try to take things a little bit more seriously, but sometimes they can't, because what you're gonna do when this is basically a world where you interact with cartoons. Even the cartoons are just kind of like kind of like the people blending in there, and you just get used to it. Almost like the world of Roger Rabbit. You just get along and just deal with it. So, like I said, Will Forte plays this lawyer who basically he's all in the dumps. He doesn't want to take risk. He just take cases and then sell them for like $100 or something like that because he doesn't want to deal with them too much. But that is when the Coyote basically, let's say that tricks him into take on a bigger case, which is none other than the Acme Corporation, and well, he gets involved into it reluctantly, but little by little, you can tell that there is kind of like this budding connection between him, the Coyote, and well, there is kind of also the lesson of determination and perseverance, even when things you can never accomplish it. Well, at least once, but that commercial, let's say that is non-canon. There are a few other human characters. One of them is Lana Condor, who she plays the niece of Will Forte. She assists him. She's kind of like the idealistic girl who wants to preach, saying that you can do it. We can do this in a better world, something like that. She wants to do more. In a way, I will say that this character is probably kind of like the weakest link of this movie because this is a character who pretty much feels like a Scrappy-Doo character, and we know what do we feel for the Scrappy-Doo character, and even her. Yeah, and while her acting is fine, I don't think that. Yeah, I'm kind of glad that she is used sparingly, and she has some important roles, but at least they use it sparingly because let's say that if they had concentrated on this character, then the story wouldn't be interesting. I'll say that because the story is about Will Forte and finding his potential as a lawyer. So pretty much that's the whole thing that I'll say from this character. Although she's doing fine, I'll say. I'm glad that they use her again sparingly. There are some other kind of like human characters. Let's say, for example, because I don't know if I want to say kind of like the bad guy, but the biggest bad guy is the rival lawyer, which is none other played by John Cena. And well, let's say that John Cena is kind of like a wrestler, even though now he has more experience in acting, considering that he was the Peacemaker, and a lot of people had fun with it. He does kind of like a good job on this one, considering that, well, there are times in which you can tell that he's kind of struggling to bring out a laugh because, well, he is surrounded by cartoon characters, and he's trying to take it kind of like seriously. But you know what? At least I'll give him this. At least it gives me kind of like a breath. It's kind of like a nice fresh breath air to see him, playing like an antagonist. Okay, maybe the Peacemaker wasn't an antagonist, but he was kind of like the jackass character. But he's kind of like the antagonist, he just go along with it, and he's fun, and of course the character he also has kind of like his wormy sidekick. And he has all these people, and they go into all these situations to try because he is of course playing like the successful lawyer. They're kind of like the antithesis of our protagonist Will Forte. And he although he does stoop to any kind of thing, like ranging from assassination attempts, hired by hired hands, of course, and bribery. The typical corporate scumbaggery that there is. Well, there are also also there are also a few secondary characters that not to mention to my life. For example, the other workers in the company who they look up for Will Forte, but this is technically Will Forte's story. And while I did talk a lot about about the Coyote and the Roadrunner. We also have to consider that they do also put in the limelight some other Looney Tunes characters. Some of them, of course, there are on the background. Some they make cameos here and there, and they did manage to pick up some of those that are obscure. I am surprised that they even got Cool Cat in it. By the way, not the Cool Cat. Not the Cool Cat from those cringy video, like Cool Cat saves the neighborhood or Cool Cat going against the bullies. No, not that Cool Cat. There's another Cool Cat. You get the idea. I mean, they put a little bit more on the limelight. For example, Bugs Bunny has a good chunk of importance into the movie. Daffy Duck is also in there. Tweety Bird is also into this whole mix. We got what else have we got? We got Granny, of course, also playing an important role. But one of the important roles that I'm actually surprised that they managed to reuse is none other than Peter Lorre. Yep, cartoon Peter Lorre is there. And you know what? This kind of showcased kind of like the legend of Peter Lorre. The guy is no longer with us. And it's now over the years, now that they are using him as a Looney Tunes character, we could say that Peter Lorre didn't die. He just transcended to become a cartoon. What an accomplishment that this man has made. And okay, so continuing on, what about how the movie looks? Because I would say that I like how the movie looks, in which, well, you can notice that they do some CGI in some places here and there. I like the aesthetic of the cartoons, that they really look like their 2D counterpart. They don't try too hard on making CGI, just like Space Jam New Legacy did. And you know what? I like that the effort that they did, that it blends well. Not many times they do that nowadays, especially with digital graphics. That when they try to make kind of like digital graphics, and now they want to blend it on a live action, sometimes you're gonna notice. This is why the Who Framed Roger Rabbit kind of feels like the cartoons are actually blending well on that. Even though that was kind of like a big effort here and there. Although I did notice a little bit of a hiccup. Like, for example, there was kind of like a moment in which I saw Cecil Turtle, and he looks a little bit too exposed and didn't blend too well onto the background. But I think that this is me just trying to have my eyes adjusted, and it took some time until finally putting them. How can I say? Until I finally get into it and got used to it. And well, yeah, the cinematography, it has kind of like good shots of the camera, no fancy camera shots. It just do what they do in order to focus the camera on the characters and the actors, of course. Oh, and speaking of, again, back to Looney Tunes, now that I remember, you're gonna be disappointed that there's no Lola Bunny. I'll just leave it at that. Oh well. And yes, and also we have the typical music that we get, and as for the humor, let's say that this movie is quite funny. I'll say, not all jokes land. Probably because now I grew up a little bit too old and know that, well, the Looney Tunes, this is what they do. They do their slapstick. Sometimes, although it's still really fun. I think that this kind of it charms, especially the younger audience. As for the older audience, it does feel kind of like nostalgia. You know, we kind of miss out, these moments in which they're just chaotic and something like that. I mean, look how the day they blew up, they took advantage of what the Looney Tunes do when they get wacky, and this one, yeah, it gets wacky here and there. I kind of wish they become a little bit more risque and a little bit more chaotic, but well, they also leave a little bit more space because they just wanted to make a courtroom drama in which. For some reason, it kind of reminded me when I was playing the Phoenix Wright stories. The Phoenix Wright games in which you're a lawyer, you look for clues, you find a conspiracy. Like, for example, in this case, there is a big reason why the Acme Corporation deliberately make malfunction products. And of course, all this malfunction, it really takes a psychological toll on the cartoon characters that are especially test subjects. And of course, the biggest test subject is none other than their best client, which is none other than the Coyote. Which and this is where I even subtly go into the territory about where the movie actually kind of like this jab corporate cynicism. In a way, I think this is kind of like an overused kind of plot, like in which they say that, yeah, the plot is about evil corporation here and there. Although the biggest irony of that is when I forgot to mention that the big bad guy, which is actually the big CEO of the Acme Corporation, is none other than Foghorn Leghorn himself. Yeah, Foghorn. In this one, we have Foghorn Leghorn technically as the villain, and of course he keeps on being the ranty, lovable self that we know. But man, that for this one, they really make him the bad guy. But you know what? This is technically considering that Foghorn Leghorn, he's always, playing like the jerk in other incarnations. Let me look at how he is in the Looney Tunes show or something like that. So yeah, that's pretty much returning to what the whole thing is that it also is kind of like self-aware about the Coyote's struggles on the Roadrunner and why he gets the Acme Corporation, why he wants to sue him. Although there is a big twist on the whole reason why he wants to sue him, but I'm not gonna dare to reveal to you. But what makes this movie actually heartwarming is basically how this movie actually takes advantage of why do we feel kind of, in a sense that we want, but I also don't want the Coyote to get the Roadrunner. We got kind of like this mixed feeling in which, even though he's never gonna get it, well, at least once, you kind of get the big question: why does he keep doing it? Yeah, the Roadrunner is not exactly kind of like fat in order to get him. But you're gonna see that, well, the movie actually showcases its strength by saying why he does it, why the Coyote have this determination, and where he sets his pride on just catching that one bird, and also the significance on their relationship. I mean, the whole movie also kind of tries to have the Roadrunner testify against it. That's kind of like a plot into it, but mostly it's kind of trying to help out Will Forte to not be afraid of losing and just keep doing and not being afraid of failure. And when you fail, well, it's not the end of the world if you're just alive. And for the case of course, the courtroom cynicism, of course, kind of saying that how they treat people as more test products and not caring about what they do because well at the end of the day they're still gonna buy them and also they're still it still has some benefit of the of being a test subject here and there. So there is kind of like this cynical thing that again it's kind of ironic that it also kind of portrays kind of like what Warner Brother is how it treated this movie, putting it on a shelf and not thinking that oh this is something from Little Stuff and all this stuff, and it took basically a little company in order to take their odds against kind of like this big company like Warner Brother, because they could easily pull out a Nintendo and then say you can't do it, this is copyright, it's copyright and all this stuff. So there is something kind of like this clever jab to corporate cynicism, and I'm not saying like for example that we should be kind of like anti-corporate something like that. I kind of wish that there can be a movie that kind of says a little bit the opposite of that, but still that's basically what I could tell from the story. And of course, it gave us the kind of like these some funny gags here and there. One of them involved a spider. That was kind of like one of the biggest laughs that got me. So yeah, I would say that despite some minor things here and there, the more I still think about this movie, I can't help but loving it. And I would say that this is indeed probably one of the best Looney Tunes movie that there was. I could say that I like this movie even better than probably Looney Tunes Back in Action. It's gonna top. I think it could be a little bit on par on Space Jam, the first one, just in case. But I think that in terms of writing, Coyote versus Acme is better. Because Space Jam, it's more kind of like a nostalgic goggles that it still has some corny things that is kind of like a guilty pleasure. And look at me, I am praising this movie considering that first of all, it has James Gunn producing it, and you know how James Gunn is doing with the DC products. And also the director of that garbage movie that I don't want to watch, which is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. What was it? Out of Their Shells or something like that. Which is basically the sequel of that awful Michael Bay Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie that I don't even want to revisit and all this stuff. Okay, we could consider this a little bit of a redemption arc. So yeah, I really highly recommend you to watch Coyote versus Acme. It really the Looney Tunes really went through a rough patch, and this movie kind of proves that there's still love. There's still some love into it. There's a lot of talent that they do into it. And it's a nice case. It's a nice case for a movie that it wasn't treated well. So do me a favor and check this out. I declare this movie not guilty. Court is adjourned.